My name don't matter much anymore, child. Folks used to call me Margaret back when my voice was stronger and my hands didn't shake this bad. I was born in Detroit in the winter of 1933, when the cold felt like it could crawl right into your bones and never leave. Times were rough back then, real rough. The kind of rough that teaches you early how to stay quiet and grateful, even when your stomach's crying louder than your mouth ever could. My mama used to say, I came into this world during one of the hardest seasons God ever sent America. The Great Depression had already kicked the doors in, and people were just trying to survive one day at a time. Daddy worked when he could, mostly factory scraps and odd jobs, and when he couldn't, well, we just learned how to wait. Waiting was something I got real good at, even as a little girl. World War I had ended long before I was born, but its shadow still lived in our house. Daddy never fought in it, but his older brother did, and he never came back the same. Sometimes Daddy would sit at the table, staring at nothing, talking about trenches and gas and screams that followed men home even when the war was done. I didn't understand it then, but I could feel it. Fear don't always need words. It just hangs in the air like smoke you can't see. We didn't have much. Most days, supper was beans, bread, and hope. Mama stretched every penny till it cried mercy. I remember winters when my shoes had holes, and Mama stuffed newspaper inside to keep my feet warm. I remember lying in bed at night, listening to the wind rattle the windows, praying the roof would hold till morning. Ain't easy growing up knowing the world can take everything from you and not even say sorry. School was my small escape. The classroom smelled like chalk and old books, and for a few hours, I could pretend life was simple. I dreamed big dreams back then. I wanted to be a teacher, maybe wear nice dresses, maybe live in a house where the lights didn't flicker every time the wind blew. But even as a child, I knew dreams cost money, and money was something we barely ever saw. By the late 1930s, whispers of another war started floating around. Grown folks talked in low voices, radios murmured bad news, and Mama prayed harder at night. When World War II finally came, it felt like the whole country held its breath. Sirens, ration books, empty shelves, fear came back, dressed in a new uniform. I was just a kid back then, but I knew something big and terrible was happening. Neighbors cried, flags went up, young men disappeared from our streets, and every night, when Mama kissed my forehead, her lips trembled like she wasn't sure the world would still be standing by morning. That was my childhood. Cold hands, quiet prayers, and a heart learning way too early that life hits hard and keeps on hitting. By the time I hit my teenage years, the war had already stolen a piece of everybody I knew. Detroit didn't feel like the same city anymore. Factories ran day and night, loud and restless, like they were trying to drown out the fear. The air smelled of oil and sweat, and people walked faster, talked less. Childhood slipped away from me without asking permission. One day I was playing hopscotch on the sidewalk, and the next I was standing in line with Mama, holding ration coupons, pretending not to notice the worry carved deep into her face. I was 16 when I first understood what love could do to a girl's heart. His name was Thomas. Tall, quiet, kind eyes. Worked part-time near the factory and smiled like he believed the world might still turn out okay. He'd walk me home sometimes, slow like, kicking pebbles down the road. We didn't have much to talk about, but silence felt safe with him. Back then, that felt like everything. World War II was everywhere. Posters on walls, flags in windows, prayers in churches. And then, one morning, Thomas told me he was enlisting. Said he had to do his part. Said it with pride, but his hands were shaking. I remember nodding, pretending to be strong, while something inside me cracked clean in half. I was just a girl, barely grown, and already learning how love and loss like to walk hand in hand. The day he left, the train station was full of crying women and brave smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes. Mama held my hand tight, too tight. Thomas kissed my forehead and whispered, "I'll write." I watched that train pull away until it was nothing but smoke and noise and goodbye. That moment stayed with me, still does. Letters became my lifeline. Every envelope felt like a miracle. I'd read his words over and over till the paper went soft. He never wrote about the fighting, just talked about missing home, missing quiet nights, missing me. Sometimes weeks passed with nothing. Those were the hardest days. Every knock on the door made my heart jump. Fear has a sound, and it sounds a lot like waiting. Not everyone got letters. Some families got telegrams instead. Short, cold, final. I watched strong women crumble in the street, watched Mama cross herself, and whisper prayers for boys she didn't even know. That war took more than lives. It took peace. It took sleep. It took innocence. Thomas never came back. The letter came in the fall. Mama opened it. I already knew before she spoke. He was gone, somewhere overseas, buried in a place I'd never see. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, numb, holding a future that vanished in a single sentence. That broke me inside. First love has a way of doing that. By my early 20s, people expected me to move on. "You're young," they said. "Life goes on." And it did, whether I was ready or not. I worked, helped Mama, learned how to smile again. But something in me stayed behind with that boy and that war. Youth taught me my first hard lesson. Love ain't always enough, and sometimes survival means learning how to carry loss quietly and keep breathing anyway. I married in my mid-20s, not out of some grand romance, but out of tiredness and hope mixed together. His name was Robert. He was steady, quiet, the kind of man folks said would make a good provider. After everything I'd lost, steady felt safe. Love, the loud kind, had already burned me once. I didn't think my heart could survive that again. So I chose a life that looked solid from the outside. Marriage wasn't what the movies promised. It wasn't soft kisses or long talks by the fire. It was bills on the table, early mornings, and learning how to swallow words before they turned into fights. Robert worked long hours, sometimes 2 jobs, and when he came home, he was tired down to his bones. He wasn't cruel, not really, just distant. Some nights we sat at the same table and felt like strangers passing time together. Motherhood came fast. First one baby, then another. Tiny hands, hungry cries, sleepless nights. I loved my children in a way that scared me. That kind of love makes you forget yourself. I learned how to stretch meals, how to patch clothes, how to smile even when I felt empty. Some days, I didn't even remember who I used to be before I became Mama. Money was always tight. There were months when we barely got by. I took in sewing, cleaned houses, did whatever I could without leaving the kids alone too long. Pride had no place in our home. Survival did. I remember nights counting coins on the kitchen table, praying they'd somehow turn into more by morning. Robert grew quieter as the years went on. He carried his own weight, his own disappointments. Men back then didn't talk about feelings. They buried them deep and called it strength. But that silence created space between us. I felt lonely even lying beside him. That kind of loneliness hurts worse than being alone. I sacrificed a lot without ever saying it out loud. Dreams of teaching faded away. Friends drifted. I put everyone else first and told myself that was what a good woman did. Some days I believed it. Other days, I cried into dishwater so the kids wouldn't hear. The world was changing in the 1960s, but my life stayed small. Protests, new ideas, louder voices. I watched it all from a distance, rocking babies, folding laundry. Sometimes I wondered what life might have been if I'd chosen differently, but wondering didn't change diapers or put food on the table. What middle age taught me was this: strength doesn't always look brave. Sometimes it looks like getting up every day with a tired heart and doing what needs to be done anyway. I learned how to endure, how to love quietly, how to keep going, even when no one noticed. I didn't feel heroic. I felt worn. But somehow, I kept holding on. By the time I reached my 40s, life had slowed in some ways and grown heavier in others. The kids weren't little anymore. They had their own thoughts, their own worlds, and slowly, without meaning to, they started pulling away. I watched it happen in small moments, doors closing more often, conversations getting shorter, laughter moving out of the house. That house that once felt too loud now felt too quiet. Robert and I barely talked by then, not because we hated each other, but because there wasn't much left to say. Years of silence had built walls neither of us knew how to tear down. He still worked. I still kept the house running. We moved around each other like old furniture, familiar, useful, but never truly seen. My body started to change. Aches in my back, pain in my hands, tiredness that sleep couldn't fix. Doctors said it was just age, just wear and tear. I nodded and accepted it. Women like me didn't complain much. We endured. That's what we were taught. The nights were the hardest. After everyone went to bed, I'd sit alone at the kitchen table, the clock ticking louder than my thoughts. That's when regrets came knocking. Dreams I'd packed away long ago started whispering again. The teacher I never became, the girl who once believed love could save her. I wondered if she'd recognize the woman I'd turned into. By the 1970s, the children were grown and gone. One moved out of state. Another married young. Phone calls were rare. Letters came less and less. I told myself that was life. That was how it was supposed to be. Still, it hurt. A mother's heart doesn't know how to let go easy. Loneliness settled into my bones. Even when Robert was home, I felt alone. We shared a house, not a life. Sometimes I'd catch him staring out the window, same as me, both of us wondering where the years went. We never talked about it. Silence had become our language. Faith was the only thing that stayed. I went to church. I prayed. Not for miracles, just for strength. Just enough to make it through another day. I learned that survival isn't loud. It's quiet. It's waking up, putting one foot in front of the other, and choosing not to give up. By then, I understood something important. Life doesn't always give you what you hoped for. Sometimes it gives you what you can handle. And somehow, even with all the hurt, I was still standing. That had to count for something. Now here I am, 65 years old, sitting in this same old house, talking to memories more than people. The walls know my story better than anyone. They've heard my laughter when the children were small, and they've heard my crying when the nights got too long. Robert passed a few years back, quietly in his sleep, just like the way he lived. When they lowered him into the ground, I felt sad, but mostly I felt tired. Tired in a way that goes deeper than the body. The kids come when they can, holidays, birthdays, sometimes not even then. They've got their own lives now. Jobs, families, worries of their own. I don't blame them. That's how life moves forward, whether you're ready or not. Still, when the house gets quiet again, the silence feels heavier than it ever did before. I spend my days slow now. A little cleaning, a little cooking, a lot of remembering. I look at my hands and see every year written on them. These hands held babies, wiped tears, worked till they cracked. They let go of people they loved and kept going anyway. If I've learned anything, it's this. A woman's strength is often invisible, but it's endless. Sometimes young women ask me if I'd do it all again, if I'd choose the same life. I don't know how to answer that easy. Life ain't black and white. It's a long road full of bends you don't see coming. What I do tell them is this: don't lose yourself completely. Love deeply, yes, but love yourself too. Hold on to something that's just yours, because one day, when everyone's gone, that's what'll keep you standing. Be patient, but don't be silent forever. Be kind, but don't forget your worth. Have faith, even when God feels far away, especially then. And understand this: sacrifice is powerful, but it leaves scars. Make sure someone knows what you gave up, even if that someone is just you. I've lived through hunger, war, loss, and loneliness. I've buried dreams and people I loved. And still I'm here, breathing, remembering. That has to mean something. Maybe survival itself is a kind of victory. Now, as the years slow me down and my voice gets softer, I know my time is closer behind me than ahead. I don't fear it anymore. I've made peace with what was and what never came to be. All I hope is that when I'm gone, someone remembers that I loved hard, endured quietly, and held on even when my hands were shaking. Because in the end, child, a woman's life ain't measured by how loud she lived, but by how much pain she carried without letting it harden her heart.